Hello, everyone. It's Micah, and coming to join us shortly, as usual, is Amir. When I start talking, here he comes. So you will see a cat shortly. This is episode 4 of Work in Progress, and today we're just going to launch into it. Here's what I did the past day. After I made the video last night, I did a little textbook. That's the heading for the next broad category of things that I want to tackle on an ongoing basis. And so Wednesday night, for the time being, is going to be my designated textbook night. And what that means is I'm a big nerd. I just love textbooks. I like the idea of studying independently and working through textbooks. And I have quite a number of them, and some of them are quite large. Some of them I picked up at thrift stores. Some of them are my own college books, where the multiple things that I had due in different classes. Plus, I was when I went to college, when I went back to school for my accounting degree. I was working at the same time. It was all I could do to just barely keep up with assignments. So I felt like I didn't give full attention to the scholarship of and the idea of retaining the knowledge. So yes, please don't get stuck in the plastic bag, Amir. So I kind of want to revisit those textbooks and go through them and really understand the concepts. And I'm pretty agnostic when it comes to what type of textbook or what type of learning I want to do. I've directed several other of my avenues of inquiry pretty precisely. But when it comes to this category known as textbook, this is sort of my playground where I become a student again, and I just sort of learn or relearn these things that are highly technical or highly specific. At any rate, that was an overly long introduction to that. The textbook that I'm going through first is an algebra textbook, a college algebra textbook from when I went back to school. When I took algebra in college, it was kind of weird because it had been, at that point, about 12 years since I had picked up a math textbook and tried to do math. And what I recall is that I did well in the class, and that it all came back to me, because although it was called college algebra, it was really just a one semester recap of algebra 1 and 2, maybe not even 2. So I don't think that there were very many new concepts that were introduced. But it goes really fast. It goes all the way to quadratic equations in the third section of the first chapter, which I remember when I took it in 8th grade. I think it took us all the way to the end of the first semester to get to quadratic equations. So it's definitely an accelerated pace. I kind of want to get into math a little bit. I really, it's very intriguing to me. It's challenging for me. It's not something that comes, like advanced math does not come naturally to me. I don't feel like I'm in my wheelhouse with math the way that I do with English. Until I got to, say, Algebra 2 in high school, I felt very confident in math. To some degree, I felt like I was more of a math person than an English person in some ways. I had done so well. And up through geometry in high school, I was just like boom, boom, boom. And then in Algebra 2, I started having to just kind of memorize stuff and hold on by the skin of my teeth. Is that a mixed metaphor? I think it is. And now I'm saying that English is my strong suit. But at any rate, I'm relearning algebra, and I did some word problems, and then I did some reading up on quadratic equations last night. Truthfully, I got a late start because I got into a conversation with my sister-in-law, and I call her my sister-in-law, but there's no law there at the moment, but that's another whole personal story. But I got into an extended conversation with her, and so I only had about an hour and a half to devote to the math problems and studying, but it was a very productive hour and a half, so I feel like I checked the box. And that's what it's about. Like, life is going to come up, things are going to come up. You don't want to shut down conversations with people you have connections with because you have to stay on your schedule. Like, you have to allow yourself room to breathe and be social, or at least that's the way I'm trying to approach this. I've been overly rigid in the past, or even when I wasn't overly rigid in practice, in my mind I said, oh, I'm on this schedule, and if I broke the schedule, then it was almost like it was an enchantment of sorts that I had placed on myself. And once I broke the schedule, the enchantment was over, and I just abandoned the entire effort. So I'm really trying to work with the ups and downs of life. And I'm dealing with that a little bit tonight as well. If I look a little sleepy, it's because I'm making this video much later, much later than my intention was. But I've had a busy day, and I gave myself the space to do that. But at any rate, a really good, productive hour and a half or so last night of Algebra. Interesting. And then today I listened to some more, another couple of hours out of the audiobook on the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin. Truthfully, I only got the broadest sketches of what was being narrated. This is one of those things where it's a short enough book that I feel like I kind of want to pull it down, a digital copy of it, and just read it. It's not one of those books that lends itself to an audiobook rendering. And as I said, I'm a little annoyed with how they read everything, including the footnotes. And it's, I know Benjamin Franklin's writing is a little terse, but it's not that terse. I mean, this is a classic of American literature, and perhaps the most widely read biography in the English language. I know it's a good book. I just don't think that hearing it narrated in slightly archaic language and with a lot of very specific anecdotal particulars that don't necessarily lead anywhere, they just kind of give you they just sort of set the scene, or like lay down the groundwork for who he's going to be later on in life. So it's a little harder to follow, and plus I was really preoccupied while I was listening. In other words, I don't really have a lot of takeaways from, and we're still up to about when Ben Franklin was about 30 years old. That's where we left off. And actually we left off at the part of the book where the tone is supposed to change, because the first few chapters of what would later become the autobiography were personal anecdotes, kind of like what I was saying, that were written for the consumption of his family. It wasn't written with the view towards publication. It was something more in the family. And then later on, when the project was picked back up years later, and it was the idea was to take those early passages and combine them with the rest of the story, which was actually self-consciously written for publication. So I cut myself off. I found that to be a good stopping point. Maybe when the tone changes, it'll work better as an audiobook. But that's where I am there. And then today I also finished off Ciara's discography after years and years and years of putting off listening to her entire discography, because I call myself a Ciara fan, but I've never sat down and listened to all of her music. Now I can say I have. I listened to the last 3 records today, and it was a much quicker listen because her projects have become less and less elaborate over the years, as I think that speaks to her dwindling budgets for her productions, and the fact that back in I guess it was after her 2015 album, Jackie, which was the first album I listened to today, she became an independent artist. So she can't just, she doesn't have label money to just go in the studio and record 30 tracks and put 18 of them on an album or anything like that. She's been very much to the point since she's been using her own money to make her albums. Her more recent stuff is a little bit of a mixed bag. None of these 3 projects, Jackie of 2015, Beauty Marks in 2019, and what was essentially, I guess it was an EP that was released last year called Cece. It's only like 21 minutes long and has 7 tracks on it. None of those projects coheres as a really, really strong album to me. in the way that the first 5 albums of her career did, but you can definitely see some maturity, and you can see Ciara becoming more comfortable with her voice, and becoming more focused with what she wants to do, and branching out and becoming more pop. I think she felt this burden early on to live up to the title that Lil Jon gave her of being the queen of crunk and beat. You know what? I'm gonna stop for a second. I just realized that I think I've been gazing off into the distance this entire video for whatever reason. So now I just became conscious of that. So now I'm going to look at the camera. I don't really know what I was looking at before. I think I was imagining that everyone was out here, like over there, as opposed to the camera being here. When in reality, most of the people that are here are, you can't see him here, but he's right there. And so I don't even know if any of my videos have gotten any views yet, and that's fine because it's a work in progress. So I'm not ready for prime time, and I don't know if I'll ever be. This is really more about, like I said, not to reintroduce every single video what this series is about, but this is about me documenting things for me, and at some point in the future we'll see about taking it beyond that place, but at any rate, now that I'm got the camera in view, now that I'm not staring off into the distance, I guess I was talking about Ciara's albums. The early albums, very cohesive. I don't know, the Goodies album, not very cohesive, just a bunch of songs, but a bunch of really great songs for the most part. And as I mentioned, I was a little disillusioned, and especially after coming off of listening to Billie Eilish, I was a little disillusioned with her sophomore album, which was called The Evolution, because it felt really forced. Like she was trying very, very hard to make a statement piece before she really, and she was only like 19 years old, so she really didn't, Billie Eilish was 19 years old when she did Happier Than Ever. She'd already made 3 really introspective works at that point. And this is where my frustration comes in, because I don't like comparing apples and oranges, and Ciara was not trying to do the same thing that Billie Eilish is, but I think on The Evolution, she tried to go a little deeper. She was a little out of her depth, just to put it in plain English. There wasn't anything wrong with her musing on things that were important to her at the time, but it doesn't resonate artistically because she's not really saying anything new or different. Basically, it never really gets any deeper than I'm growing as a person. There's not really, she's telling and not really showing. And that's always, what they tell you in writing class. The difference is, if you're just telling me what's going on, as opposed to showing me, then you're just reporting things in a way which makes me understand generally where you're coming from, but they don't get me to feel what you're feeling. I felt the same way about the Jackie album from 2015. But to back up and go through, after The Evolution, Ciara found a good middle ground where she was making music that meant something to her, but wasn't overwrought and wasn't like, I'm trying really, really hard to tell you something important. And I think that's the sweet spot for her, and she really hit that with the next couple of albums. And then with Jackie came out in 2015, and it was basically seen as, and in many ways, especially with the lead single being Never Ever, it was seen as her breakup album from Future. He had started collaborating with her on her previous album, and they were hot and heavy for a while. Had their son, also named Future, together, and then it was a very public and nasty breakup that they had. And she makes a couple of references to that, and she makes a couple of references in the songs to basically breaking out and having a new life and hoping for something that's better. One of the songs on there, if I can remember it, Uh, Maybe it was only one. I'm not really sure, but one of the songs on there, she expresses a longing for someone uh, to come along that's going to be better than you, presumably better than her recent breakup, her recent ex at that time, and it's so prescient because, of course, we all know who waltzed into the picture, and they've been, so far been happily ever after ever since. So that was very gratifying. But by and large, Jackie is another instance where she's definitely trying really hard to relate what she's going through, and she's certainly going through some things, but she's more so telling you than showing you. And but I will say that Dance Like We're Making Love is one of her best songs ever. And I did appreciate that she wasn't trying so hard to live up to the Queen of Crunk and Bee thing. And that was the album, Jackie, and ever since then she's toned it down a little bit. There's not all these production bells and whistles going off every 2 seconds. That's part of what makes her music exciting and part of what I like. So in a way I miss it, but I also appreciate that she feels like she can make straight ahead music where it's really about her delivering a song vocally and having just some solid musicianship backing her up that isn't overly like, neon lights flashing or the audio equivalent of that. And so I do appreciate that. And let's see. Actually, you know what? Did I say Never Ever? I think I said Never Ever was the song about Future, but it was I Bet. And one very interesting, only to me, anecdote about this, for some reason, all this time, because I hadn't listened to the album, I thought Jackie was because the cover of the album is Ciara sitting cross-legged, looking over her shoulder, topless, with a sort of a almost sullen, resentful look on her face. And then the song "I Bet," which is kind of a bitter breakup song about making reference to infidelities, and that was part of what was going on and was what was involved with her breakup with Future. And for some reason, I sort of conflated some things because of the imagery on the album, which put me in the mindset of somebody telling somebody off, and the name of the album was Jackie. In my mind, I was thinking that the song Jackie, or the concept of Jackie as the album title, was some sort of a personal letter to the person that Future was having an affair with. Even if it was a fictional character, it was sort of a representation of that. I had built this whole story up in my head about this, and then I was reading about the album as I was listening to it on Wikipedia, and it turns out that was just her mom's name. And she named the album after her mom because she had just become a mother, and now the things that her mother went through were resonating with her, or she felt like she was going through some of those same things and starting to really relate to her because of that shared experience of motherhood. So I made that totally up in my head, and it's just interesting how your brain works and fills in gaps of information when it doesn't have the information. And I think it's really good for people to kind of understand that a lot of the stuff we think we know, we don't really know. And then for Beauty Marks, I had already listened to that. When that album came out, I was like gung-ho, ready for Ciara to take over the world, because first it was Level Up, which while it wasn't a big chart hit, it went several times platinum and was a huge viral social media boosted hit. And then she followed that up with Thinking About You, which I think is, I keep saying this because she has so many extraordinary pop records, but Thinking About You is one of the sunniest, brightest, happiest songs. Like, Janet is my favorite, or has been my favorite over the years, And she has songs like Escapade and When I Think of You that are bright and sunny, and you can't really touch her when she, as far as I'm concerned, in that category of song. But Thinking About You is in that class. It is that buoyant and happy, and the vocal delivery is just so silky, and the production is so effortless. I just love that song. So when I listened to the album Beauty Marks the first time in 2019, I was let down because I was expecting this to be her home run, hit it out of the park. She's going to become a superstar. But it did not. The album basically flopped. And there's nothing else on the album as riveting as Thinking About You. But this listen 5 years later that I just listened to it again today for the first time in 5 years. I was trying to make that a lyrical sentence and it didn't work. I wasn't, my expectation level wasn't as high, and I actually found it a pretty enjoyable listen. It was better than I remember it being. And the only other real noteworthy song on there is the title track, which closes out the album. Beauty Marks, the song, it's blatantly manipulative and very formulaic in its own way, but she's also talking about how her husband makes her feel beautiful, and it's such an honest and raw and beautiful sentiment that even though it's completely hokey, it's completely corny, and completely manipulative, it's a literal tearjerker. I challenge you, and if you get a chance, watch the video, the homemade video that it has a homemade feel to it. It has home movies in it of Ciara giving birth and all this other stuff. You cannot get through that video and that song without crying. I challenge you to do that. It's just a really pretty record, and I applaud her for being that raw and vulnerable. But the rest of the album is kind of like, it's okay. And the CC EP from last year, again, it's fine. It's okay. There's nothing really wrong with it. How We Roll, of course, became a slow burn hit on the R&B charts, and I was happy that she got some measure of success. I think CC's is, I can call her that because that's what the EP is called. CC over the years has really had her share of disappointments and undeserved disappointments in my mind, because she's put out some extraordinary R&B and pop and dance music, and people are just seem indifferent to it at times, and I don't quite understand it. So I was really happy that How We Roll actually had some success. And the other 6 songs on the record are fine. They're good. They're okay, and just nothing noteworthy. If I were doing a real... And see, this is the thing. My other channel was all music reactions, and I find myself gravitating just toward the music reaction part, and everything else is kind of whatever. I hope these videos will become more balanced over time. But pop music is really sort of something that I have a passion for, so I guess I am going to talk about it a lot. All right, well, that's all for episode 4. I'll be back hopefully tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be Friday, so that might be a little more challenging for me to find the time to do a video, but I'm going to make every effort because, I party hard on Friday nights. And if you know me, you know how ridiculous that statement is. Until tomorrow, signing off.